All right, awesome. Let's start with skill 1, the ready position.
And let's make sure we talk about how to hold the racket. So a quick talk about shake hands. So Ari has a very unique setup here. So some people might need some grip assistance. Does one of our other coaches have a nice video and a racket that they can show? Otherwise, I can show you on a humorous phone.
I got a racket in my hand.
Perfect. Thanks, Coach Christian.
All right. So so I have the huge benefit of having a hand.
Yes.
So this is how you do it. So you hold it like this all the way up, index finger down on the backhand side. There's a backhand side, and index finger down. Let me see. Let me take off my virtual background. Okay, now we have less interference. All right, so so Ari has a perfect setup for him, so he can't change his grip. So, but for you who can change your grip, the goal is actually to not change your grip. So you have all the way up here, the thumb down, and the index finger down, and that's basically grip for shake hand. That's the most common grip for most people. But of course, if you don't have a hand or you have some modifications, issues with your hand, you cannot do that, then you try to find the best way you can. But if you have a good hand, then a normal hand, so to speak, then you hold it like this. That's the recommended grip. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Christian.
All right, are we ready to move on to skill 2?
Yes.
Let's do 10-second ball balance.
Ball balance. So this one, I think, won't come up that often in match play, but it's useful hand-eye coordination skill. You want to keep the racket pretty much parallel to the floor and try to keep the ball in the center of it. I really don't have much technical advice for this one. It really is just a matter of getting your hand to do what your brain wants in response to the motions of the ball rolling across the racket.
Okay, there we go. Very good. Moving on. 5 consecutive bounces. Skill number 3.
So I think a key to this one is to not be making your swing at the ball too large. You really want to let gravity do a lot of the work. And you're just, like, you can barely see my racket moving on camera. You're just giving it a little bit of help on its way back up. And this is kind of similar to the way you want to approach the ball when it's over the table, actually. You don't need a huge backswing unless you're really trying to accelerate the ball. So for like the short game over the table, you really want to come in right next to that ball for the fine control. And that's a little bit similar to what we're doing here.
And Ari, the same thing applies if you're sitting also, so.
Yeah. Close to the ball and short backswing for good control is universal, whether you're standing or sitting.
Nice.
And athletes, we invite you to perform these along with Ari, so you can show us what you got. Michaela, we can't see your hand if you want to show us your skills. You can use, if you don't have a racket, you can use, like Hayden's using, a book and a ball that he has at home. So we invite you to participate along with us.
All right, let's move on and let's talk about table work for a seated athlete or footwork for a standing athlete.
All right. So sadly, I don't have a table in my apartment, but the rough dimensions of a table are about 5 feet across, I think. So whether you're seated or standing, you need to be prepared to cover that distance. So for standing athletes, you have the luxury. Let's see if I can tilt my phone so it shows my feet a little. No, I can't. They'll be beneath the table. You have the luxury of using your feet to help you out with increasing that reach. So if you can sidestep without crossing your feet over each other, then that'll give you the greatest freedom to switch directions at really short notice. For seated athletes, you don't have the luxury of using your feet to help you reach those corners of the table.
But you
So-
do have you do have the luxury to. I play with front caster locks, and I have the ability to move in and out, not side to side, but in and out, so I can reach those short shots that Ari's talking about. So when you play in a wheelchair, you can either play with your brakes on, or if you have front caster lock for your wheelchair, you lock them up, and then you go to the right side of the line or the left side of the line, depending if you're right-handed or left-handed, and you can move in and out very easily that way to reach
That's a
short
great
shots.
piece of advice from Sebastian. If you're competing in a wheelchair, you don't have to be completely static. You can have your chair work for you a little bit.
Exactly.
Great note, Coach. Thank you. All right. Skill number 5, 10 forehand strokes.
All right, so I only have one ball. If you don't mind, I'm not going to connect with the ball every single time. I'm just going to demonstrate the stroke. What we consider to be a good technical stroke is largely you're rotating your body using as much lower body action as you can do without unbalancing yourself. That's really key. I've actually had coaches tell me I need to use less lower body action, which is really unusual for someone to say to an able-bodied athlete, but just because I was unbalancing myself. So you want to take the load off of your arm as much as possible. So if you're a seated athlete, that might mean using your core muscles if they're available to you. And besides that, it's largely a snap of the elbow. So it's offload as much work as possible to your lower body and core, and snap the elbow to pull up and make spin. That's the main component. It's not like you're not allowed to use your shoulder at all, but the real movers and shakers of a good forehand stroke are lower body and elbow.
Nice. Athletes, if you have any questions, don't forget that you can write them in the chat. We have so many great coaches here today. Take advantage. This is special to have so many high-level athletes here. All right, moving right along. Skill 6 is the backhand strokes, 10 of them.
All right, so backhand is a similar thing. Most of the motion is coming from your elbow and from your lower body. If I were to not move my arm and only show the rest, there's a little bit of body motion going on here to kickstart the stroke. And then the rest of it is coming from elbow action. If you have a hand and a wrist, you definitely want to use those to help out a little bit. But again, you don't want it to be so huge that that your wrist action compromises the consistency of your stroke. If you look at pro players, they're using their wrist, able-bodied pro players. They use their wrist in the backhand, but you can see that it doesn't mess up the racket angle during the stroke. The angle stays pretty constant.
And also, the same thing applies for sitting players too. Notice Ari never drops his paddle below his hip and up to his shoulder with the backhand stroke. Watch. Boom. See? Boom. And look where he fell. He follows with his eyes every time he makes a swing. Always looking at the ball, going into the paddle, and then releasing it and following it through. Okay? Good job, Ari.
Thanks.
Doing great, Ari. This one seems super important, the forehand rally.
All right, this is going to be a tough one to demonstrate with no table or partner. But I can at least verbally give you a few tips that will help with your control. You want to be looking for the top of the bounce, the highest point. When you see the ball coming towards you and bouncing, highest point, hit it there. That gives you the luxury of hitting the ball forwards instead of needing to lift it. And that's going to make the easiest target for you because it's got to come over the net. The higher it is, the easier it is. And you also want to establish some kind of mental yardstick for where the ball is supposed to be relative to you when you want to touch it. For me, I try to hit it right about in front of my right foot on a forehand. If I look down here, I'm contacting the ball, where it's like directly in front of my right foot if I were to drop it on the ground. Do any of the coaches have anything to add?
Sounds like you did the perfect job, Ari.
Azalea's doing a great job of demonstrating how you can do this at home if you don't have a partner. She's doing it against a wall. So great
Nice.
job, Azalea.
Nice.
Awesome. And then Ari,
She's also from Texas. Woot woot. Got a lot of Texas in the house today.
Nice.
and then Ari, the next skill is the backhand rally.
All right, so really similar deal. You want to establish some kind of reference point for where you want to hit the ball. For this reason, you'll see a lot of pro players have their free arm out in front of them as a reference point for how far from their body it's going to be. For me, I have my free arm out in front and try to touch the ball around as far from my body as my left elbow. And I try to touch it about in front of my belly button in the center of me. And with those two sort of measuring sticks, I'm able to find the position where I'm really able to crank the ball as hard as I want. And if it's too far outside of that position, I know I have to sort of use a little bit more of a touch shot and just control the ball without trying to accelerate too hard.
And the same thing applies if you're sitting down too, but you're not using your waist, you're using more of the middle of your chest because your waist is below the table. So just remember that.
Yeah, if you're seated, looks pretty similar, but maybe it's higher up relative to your body.
Correct.
Nice. Thank you, guys. Okay, number 9, state the service rules.
All right, so 6-inch toss from an open palm is one of the most important ones, and that's one of the ones that umpires will actually enforce. Ball has to be visible to the opponent from the moment of the toss to the moment of contact. That's one that the umpires will try their best to enforce, but they're really bad at it, if I'm honest. You have to contact the ball behind the white line of the table, and you also have to throw it starting from behind the white line of the table. So 6-inch toss, as close to vertical as possible. The umpires, they give a little leeway on some horizontal, but if you're throwing it straight backwards into your racket, that's not going to fly.
And the same thing applies if you're sitting also too. You have to have a 6-inch toss unless you're quadriplegic and you have a note from the doctor saying that I can't toss it 6 inches. Can I toss it from my paddle or from a different position on my hand? Okay. So if you can just practice the serve from your paddle, Ari. This is totally legal.
Sure.
Everybody got that? But the ball has to be perfectly still on the racket, no movement at all, and you must toss the ball up as far as you possibly could and then stroke it.
So, you know, this is potentially one application of the challenge that I was doing earlier where you balance the ball. Because for those of you who don't have a free hand to toss it from, you might find you need to balance it on the racket every time you want to serve. An additional service rule that applies for seated athletes that I don't think I've mentioned is that your serve has to come across the opponent's back line of the table. If it has enough backspin that it returns to the net before coming off the table, or if it goes off to the side, that's not a legal serve for seated athletes.
It's a let.
It's a let, okay.
Yes.
Not a fault. Thank you, Sebastian.
You're welcome.
I don't know how many there are, Ari, but it was that all the service rules?
That's all the service rules that I can remember. Whenever I serve in competitions, those are the ones I'm thinking of. Ooh, here's one that I've gotten called for before. When you're tossing the ball, your hand has to start above the table for your toss. That's another little one that I've gotten called on before a couple times. So you have to start above and behind the table with your hand. The whole action has to take place above and behind the table and in your opponent's view. You can't hide it like that. And the toss has to be at least 6 inches.
A couple of more things about serves, Ari. You can mention the let rules.
Okay, the let rules. If the ball touches the net on its way over to the opponent's side, then that is a let, which means you get to redo the serve, nobody scores a point.
And then you have doubles also.
In doubles, thanks, Christian. In double, you will be serving exclusively from your right hand half of the table. So imagine there's a little line drawn here. You're serving only from the right hand side of the table, cross court, to, it's going to be your opponent's right hand, but for you it'll be left.
It's the same thing as tennis. Guys play tennis, you have to serve to the opposite vector, right? That's the same thing applies for table tennis.
Serve rules, that's what a double serve has to look like.
Right. And there's an imaginary line on the outside of the table that keeps going that you can't cross either. And if you play sitting, you cannot cross the line with your back wheel of your teammate. You have to stay on your side of the line.
And coaches, if you, unfortunately make one of these errors, what happens? You get a point, or the other coach gets or other player gets a point? What happens?
The other team gets a point. Sorry.
It can depend on how strict the umpire is feeling, actually. Sometimes they'll let you off with just a warning saying, warning, toss the ball from above the table, or next time I'm going to dock you a point. But yeah, if you're doing it wrong the same way over and over again, eventually you are going to start losing points for it.
So this is important. Every point counts, right?
Yeah, sure it does at 11.
And your serve ideally should be a big advantage for you because you get to control how the point starts. If if your opponent has a bad backhand, your serve is the easiest time to target that, for example. Or if their short game is bad, it's really hard to play a short ball when your opponent is giving you something long and fast. But on a serve, you can say, well, I control how we're going to start off this point. Are we going to start on a short game, or are we going to start long, backhand, forehand, middle?
Definitely. Yeah, good note, good point. And then, the last skill on here is the 15 legal services. Can you guys elaborate on that?
Oh, sorry, that's a typo. They're just to demonstrate 5 legal services. So everyone gets to practice showing us the ball, doing the toss, and performing the serve.
Makes more sense. Thank you, Coach Jen.
All right, so do you want me to actually do some motions where I hit the ball and then have to go pick it up like I would with real serves in a match? Or, yeah?
Let's try one of those.
That sounds great, Arya. Yeah.
Okay, so besides doing this, I want to talk about beyond a legal serve, I want to talk about what makes a good serve. So a good serve, no matter if it's short or long, pretty much always has to be low. And for you to keep your serve low, it means that you touch the ball at about the same height as the top of the net. And what I've learned from playing is that the top of the net is much lower than it looks like it is. So you really pretty far before you touch it in order to keep your serve low. You can control the length of your serve on the opponent's side by focusing on where the serve bounces, the first bounce on your side. When you want to do a long serve, you make the first bounce on your side really close to the edge. And you give it a little more forward action. And that'll get your serve nice and long. When you want to do a short serve, you try to make your first bounce either in the middle of the table or closer to the net. And you don't really give it as much forward action. Another thing that makes a good serve is deceptiveness. You want to make sure that you have one service motion that looks the same if you're serving backspin or topspin. And depending on where in the motion you touch the ball, you can change it from backspin to topspin. So what I mostly do is this backhand serve. You can see it's a sort of U-shaped motion where I'm coming in and down. That's where the backspin could have come in. And then I'm pulling up. And it's moving sideways the whole time because topspin versus backspin is a little harder to read when there's some side spin mixed in. So another popular one that a lot of athletes like to do is the forehand serve, where you're coming in, down, up, like that. Or the reverse forehand serve, which is a little tricky. You're going in, down, up. But I think those are the key points of service that you would want to keep in mind.
Well, Ari, one more thing I'd like to add. Just remember, you're setting up your opponent for the third shot. That's why you serve. You want the third shot, he returns the serve, and you want to put the ball away. Okay, so when you serve, think about what your strategy is and how you want to set up your opponent.
That's right. When you serve, you have, as I said before, full control of what the ball is going to do. You can say short, long, backspin, topspin, any part of the table. So you, over the course of the match, you want to learn how your opponent is going to respond to any of those given balls. And then be giving them the serve that gets the response you like most. For instance, one that I see pretty often in class 6 is that people aren't very good at coming in for a short forehand. They reach pretty far, and then their ball is a little bit low quality. So playing a lot of serves, either topspin or no spin, short to the forehand, often results in them sort of reaching out, just barely getting to the ball, and it comes a little high, and then you can do something good on the third. Alternately, if you see them coming in to guard that short ball, you've caught them reaching a few times, and they sort of start stepping in, that's when you can hit them with the long one to the backhand or to the crossover point.
Very good, Ari.
Yeah, Ari, that was great. Go ahead, Jen.
Ari, I'd like to request if we just do a quick recap and go through all 10 super fast speed. So for those who joined a little bit late, so starting from the beginning, just showing the balance.
Okay, so balance.
10 seconds. We count it down. Just super fast forward. 10, 9. Everyone do it along with. You can use a book. You can use whatever you have. 10, 9, 8, 7. Nice job, Michael. 6. Oh, I lost my count. Sorry. That's 10 seconds. Good. Now 5 bounces. Michaela, can you join us too? I know you got these skills. You can use a tennis ball. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many can get 5 in a row? Awesome job. Now let's practice that forehand. So even if you don't have a ball or a racket, let's see you just swing through those motions. Trunk, shoulders, the whole body moving together if you can. Seated athletes, if you need to use your non-playing arm to kind of support you on the chair. Perfect. And let's see backhand. Your chance to be a ninja. 10 times. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Perfect. Now, can you pass it against a wall and practice that back and forth doing 5 forehands in a row?
I don't know if I can do this on this wall over here. It's a little close.
And again, if you don't, anyone else who doesn't have a ball or who only has one, you can just, again, practice that motion, but 5 in that row again. Now we're going to go 5 backhands. Perfect. And now 5 legal serves.
All right, 6-inch toss. All visible the whole time. Behind and above the white line of the table.
5 of them. Let's see 5 good ones, guys. Looks good, Azalea. Looks good, Michael. Perfect. And the last one is to state those service rules together. So if you guys want to turn your microphones on, and we'll just repeat after me. Everyone ready? Come on nice and close so we can hear you. Enthusiasm's encouraged.
All right. Open palm.
Open palm, or
Open
using
palm.
a fist or an adaptation if you need to.
Above and behind the table. This one is non-negotiable. Above and behind the table.
Above and behind the table.
table.
Good job, guys.
6-inch toss.
6-inch toss.
And ball visible the whole time.
Ball visible the whole time.
Again, just like as someone who's competed, I can't stress enough that you will have opponents who are a little sketchy on that ball visible the whole time one. And the umpires will not always call them. But you've got to be prepared for that. Just, you know, do your best to make your serve deceptive through the motion, not through covering it up with your free arm. And that way, if the umpire is really strict in your match, you won't suddenly feel naked without the ability to hide your serve.
That's a great tip,
Great job,
Ari.
Coach Ari.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all the coaches.
Can I just say one extra thing too?
Sure.
Especially for the young lady in San Antonio. I know you love a track and track and field, but also if you look at Pam, if you look at myself, we both did 2 different sports in 2 different seasons. So she played basketball, I played rugby. So it's a good cross training also too for table tennis or whatever. But don't be fixed into one sport when you're young. Try to do as many as you could and enjoy it, right? Because you might find a niche in some sport that you never thought possible, and it's going to be a lifetime changer, believe me.
One question I have for all of our amazing coaches and Paralympians is, you know, you've traveled all over the world playing this game. You know, what's your favorite place or maybe best memory the sport's given you? Pam, I'd love to hear from you.
Wow, yeah, I have been to a lot of different places. I think my best competitions and my best results have happened here in the USA in terms of my actual wins. When we've hosted the para tournament in Vegas, I seem to have always, you know, played well at that particular tournament. I guess maybe it's just, or wherever it's being held, it's been in California too. Maybe it's just not having to deal with the long flight and the time change, and, you know, so maybe just easier, you know, not to have to deal with all of that. Cause that's also something you got to think about too, when you're traveling. You know, it's like the home players have that little bit of an advantage, I feel like. So, but, you know, I really enjoyed the games in London. You know, that was an amazing tournament. I mean, they're all good. They all have their, you know, different levels of excitement and fun. But yeah, I guess, you know, when actual results here in the USA, but and then the London Paralympic Games was just an amazing experience.
And thank you, Pam. And did I read right that you also went to the games for another sport?
Yeah, I initially started in table tennis, and I only played for 3 years, and I retired because I wanted to pursue my dream of wheelchair basketball. So I was with the U.S. women's wheelchair basketball team for 10 years.
That is amazing. Yeah, NWBA Hall of Famer. So I guess just, you know, another point that you can play multiple sports and succeed. Very cool. Coach Cindy, please share with us.
I think my favorite travel experiences have been at the Pan Am Games. I was able to go to them in Toronto and then later in Peru. And also I really enjoy the tournament in Costa Rica. I think in part because there's so many young people who volunteer for that particular tournament and has a real hometown feel to it. So I always enjoy interacting with the volunteers who help make a tournament like a real community building affair. So I've enjoyed the opportunity to travel and going to places also where I've never been before or probably wouldn't have gone, like Slovenia and Slovakia. So it's a great adventure traveling with your teammates and getting to know people from different cultures and using different language backgrounds that maybe you've worked on. So there's nothing like it. I hope we get this COVID-19 behind us by the time you all are ready to compete internationally, and you can experience the same joys that those of us who are speaking today have shared with you. That there's really nothing like that camaraderie of the international tournaments.
That's amazing. Yeah, definitely. It sounds like you've gone to places that you usually might have not had on the top of the bucket list. Very neat. Ari, what about you?
Well, I would say one of the best ones was when I went to Spain and got to see some relatives that I hadn't seen in maybe 10 years, just because, well, I mean, because they live in Spain and I live in the US. It was really nice to have a convenient excuse to already be in Spain and to have, US TTA pay for my flight and get to see my relatives. So that was real nice. And then I guess the best performance-wise tournament I ever had was in 2014, I think, in Slovenia, where I beat 3 guys out of the top 10 players in the world. And at the time, I was really a non-factor. No one knew my name, and it was really cool to sort of bust onto the scene like that. So I just want to, I guess, encourage all the young athletes that if you're at home training hard, it's very possible to make a huge splash at your first time internationally. So don't be intimidated by those high world rankings or those real scary looking fast strokes that the top guys might have. Just go out there and fight.
That's great advice. Thank you. I believe Coach Christian had to drop off, but Coach Sebastian, you want to bring it home for us?
Sure, absolutely. Hi, everybody. I guess my first time I won a gold medal at an international competition was the Pan Am Games in Puerto Rico. And hearing your national anthem play and being a veteran, it was really very, very special to me because I had worked so hard to try to win, and I did. And it was the first time. And I've played rugby around the world. I've coached rugby around the world. I played table tennis around the world. And I agree with Pam. I went to London on 2012 as a photographer, and it was an amazing experience. It probably was the best Paralympic Games I've ever seen. And there were some good ones with the Barcelona and, Seoul, Korea was the first time we had followed the Olympic Games at the venues. So there's so many beautiful places in the world. I can't really say that there's one best place I've ever been, but the whole experience of being an athlete and being with people that you love and care about and watch through the years grow and develop and then eventually sometimes pass away. But just knowing the people that I've known throughout the world has been the best thing I can ever imagine.
Yeah, it's amazing. You all have had such different careers, and playing at different times, but all say the same thing. So great lessons for our young athletes to hear. Really appreciate you all taking the time. Can't thank our incredible coaches enough. Students of Dominguez Hills, Jen, medical team, phenomenal work as always. You all should be very proud. I'd also like to thank the Hartford, Adaptive Apps, USA Table Tennis, and the entire team at Angel City Sports who's made this happen. Thanks,
you guys
everybody.
can unmute and let's hear it nice and loud.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Yay, Angel
Congratulations.
Sport.
All right.
Yay.
Yay.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Live next